with the construction being the industry with the highest depression rate and the highest suicide rate, um, the problem, I mean, like you said on the phone, the problem is if you sack somebody, then it's likely going to cause a spiral effect, isn't it? They're going to probably drink more, take more drugs, or whatever, or even go off and do it onto another site and do the same thing again and not learn from it. So you need to get into the core of the problem, get to the root of it, and try and establish and maybe support them through that rather than just kicking them to the curb.
It feels it's a bit like that pass the parcel game is just nobody wants to take ownership, and as an industry maybe, and this isn't just construction, this is a whole societal problem, we should be clear on that. I think there's pressures within construction that make it unique. So again, I would argue that if you're investing into somebody that's these are people that potentially at low times, and that are struggling, that to actually invest in them and show that actually we're going to put an arm up, we are going to support you, we do value you.
Join us for your weekly deep dive into the beating heart of UK construction. From groundbreaking projects to game-changing innovations, the UK Construction Podcast brings you face-to-face with the industry's brightest minds and boldest thinkers. Each episode features candid conversations with construction leaders, architects, engineers, and on-site experts who share their hard-won insights and behind-the-scenes perspectives. We cut through the noise to deliver actionable intelligence on market trends, emerging technologies, and the forces shaping British building.
Welcome everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we have Nick McMurray, founder of Positive Matters. I'm really happy about this one. Afternoon, Nick, how are we?
Yeah, very well, Jimmy. Thanks for inviting us on. Great to be here.
Good man. Like I said to you on the phone yesterday, or whenever we spoke, I've been banging on about this topic for so long to other guests and to people in the industry. It's been sort of drip feeding it into other podcast episodes. So it's great to have an actual full-on conversation with someone who advocates for it and who actually is your expertise. So thanks for coming on. Fair play to you.
I appreciate it.
So can you tell us about who you are and what your organisation does?
Sure. Be great to. So Positive Matters is founded by myself and there's another business partner, a gentleman called Peter Allen. And Peter had a consultancy business prior to when we met. And he's actually sold it into one of the largest sort of testing agencies in the UK. And he was sort of working within the commercial team doing there. So he used to specialise in sort of training, tenders, policy writing was his expertise in education. And I was there from a sort of sales perspective. I was a sort of sales manager. And we both sort of felt there was a better way of doing things from sat on that side. It's almost like they say poacher turned gamekeeper sort of thing. So we sort of seen that testing aspect of how companies were kind of using that. So we founded Positive Matters with a view to trying to make it a bit more preventative and be a bit more strategic rather than and what I mean by that is because I think things like strategy and strategic gets banded around quite a lot, but what does that mean? It's actually tailoring it to your business and actually making sure it fits for your business rather than just sort of dusting off a drug and alcohol policy when there's a problem and going, what do we do? So we're trying to kind of put in place the bits that make it a bit more strategic and a bit more preventative. And that kind of forms what we do. So that was formed just short of 4 years ago. We started. Okay. So lockdown. Look, just in the end of lockdown, in the middle of lockdown. So it's a good time to start a business. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going okay, is it? Yeah, business.
It's going okay. Yeah, we're starting. When we started, you had these grand ideas. Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be good. And I'll have to be honest with you. It is a struggle at times. To try and get people, because the concept that we're trying to sell with people is slightly different to what is the norm that's out there, which is just we get a policy and we just test people, and that's their strategy. And so we're trying to be a bit more helpful in that regard.
So you provide the actual testing yourself?
We do. So it should probably clarify. So we kind of look at it in 4 areas when we work with a business. So we would look at them in terms of helping them build and write their policy, and their operating procedures. And that's quite a key bit that gets missed. Is those. It's all right to have a policy, but it's the operating procedures for the managers to actually implement it and make sure it's run consistently and fairly, and doesn't kind of oh well, with Dave I do this, but with John I do that, and it kind of, that's when you then get into the ground of, you know, like unfair tribunals, dismissals, and it causes problems. So we do the education, the policy and procedures. The big bit that we focus on is the education, so sort of tailored education and awareness around what is, you know, what are drugs and alcohol, you know, how does this relate to the company, and specifically how does it relate to the particular role that they do. So we kind of really dive in with the organisation to understand their roles and responsibilities, so it doesn't just feel like a very vanilla, we've heard this before kind of thing. It's very much like, you work for company X, Y, and Z, your roles are this, therefore these are why we're doing this, and this is what testing will be for you, and kind of lay it out so everyone knows the rules, so they hopefully don't inadvertently break them. So that's the key bit that I think we focus on. We do the testing, which we kind of never really had the intention of doing, but we kind of moved into that because when working with our customers, we found that they were hitting problems with the providers that were out there. So we were kind of like, we could probably do something better for you. So we try and incorporate that with our ethos. So we do that. And then the big bit that we concentrate on is the support as well out the back. And I'm sure we'll come on and talk around that, but we've developed quite extensively some different support services to kind of help both the business and the individuals. So those are the four bits that we would always sort of talk about as part of a strategy.
Yeah, so that's one of the main topics I wanted to talk about. So you're integrating to try and change the zero tolerance culture sort of thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I think when I've had objections from people before and go, oh, you know, there's no deterrent if you do this, you know, you're advocating that everybody gets a second, you know, you can do what you want and you're going to get a second chance, and there's no dismissal and stuff. I mean, it's kind of like, no, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at an alternative way where you're trying to re-educate people and reframe it in a different way, rather than just this blanket zero tolerance, which I think when it started out was probably the right thing. You know, it's safety. That's at the main heart of what drugs and alcohol is about the safety of the workplace and the employees that are there. The reality is that you're employing humans, and humans have emotions. There'll be breakdowns, there'll be relationship breakdowns, you know, financial worries, there could be, you know, bereavements. These are all factors that play into it. It might even be the stress of the job that's driving them to, you know, as a coping mechanism. So just to kind of turn a blind eye and go, well, we've got a zero tolerance, so, you know, you can't fail basically, and it's gone. It's tough. So that's why we've kind of developed what we've tried to develop, or should I say, with this in the services, is an alternative that can be used in there rather than.
Yeah. So I mean, when was there a turning point or a moment when you realised that this needed focusing on?
I think it's always been there in the back of our minds that we've kind of seen there, and coming from where we were previously, we've kind of seen tribunals and cases where, you know, people are sort of sacked instantly. And it's almost like you're going back to tell the business and say, yes, it's positive, and they go, right, okay, right, well, we'll get the disciplinary booked in, and you're like, well, hold on, have you done an investigation? What's the background to, you know, you had the steps that you need to get. And that's why I think the operating procedures sometimes gets overlooked by businesses, is that you need to be clear on what you're going to be offering, and certainly what support is available to them. That's not to say that everybody just gets a free hit at it, and you go, oh, you know, you get one fail, that's fine, and then there has to be certain criteria that we've built into this, so that obviously if they're dependent on drugs and alcohol, this isn't the right kind of reframing for them. This is more for kind of like a failed rant. I don't know, I use example, you know, if my wife left me on Friday and I went down the pub and I drank too much, and I don't know, somebody offered me something and I did something stupid, you know, as a bit of a brain fart, and you've gone, right, I'm going to go and do this. You then come in on Monday and you get called in for random testing, and you go, oh shit, like, it's out of character perhaps for what it might be. So does that mean that, all right, we're going to lose you straight away, or is there an alternative where we can educate you, put you back in with some sort of boundaries and some guidelines, and and they get retested again. There'll be unannounced testing that would take place, but they'd also have access to the support with some specialist advisors to talk about that as well. So it's hopefully putting it more into a structured framework of support rather than just this you're on your own.
Yeah, I think it's really important because I mean, with the construction being the industry with the highest depression rate and the highest suicide rate, the problem, I mean, like you said on the phone, the problem is if you sack somebody, then it's likely going to cause a spiral effect, isn't it? They're going to probably drink more, take more drugs, or whatever, or even go off and do onto another site and do the same thing again and not learn from it. So you need to be getting to the core of the problem, get to the root of it, and try and establish and maybe support them through that rather than just kick them to the curb.
And we've seen a lot of times where when we're talking to sort of prospects or some customers where they've got a big supply chain, and they're kind of saying yeah that's fine, but these guys are gone, but we've got such pressures to get the jobs done.
Yeah,
that they're almost, and this is what our thing with zero tolerance is it's great to have it there, but what you actually find out when we dig under the surface and sort of scratch the surface, should I say, with organisations is they actually bypass it anyway. So they don't operate at zero tolerance. They kind of just will ignore it or say, "Oh, John's turned up drunk. Oh, send him home. Don't test him. We need him for tomorrow. So we don't want to rock the boat." And that straight away you're kind of like, well, what are you doing if you've got the policy in place in the first place and you're saying it's a zero tolerance for everyone? It's got to be that. You can't pick and choose it. And this is where we kind of saying a better way maybe might be to look at alternatives. And the supply, and that's kind of how it came about, is looking at how we support that. Like you said, what does it do? It's probably more of an inconvenience, I would suggest now, because you would know better than I would. The stats for the shortages within the industry, that people will probably have a job. They get sacked on the Tuesday, they probably got a job by the Thursday. Or probably even the Wednesday. It depends on where they are. So you're not actually resolving that person's issue. All you're doing is passing it to the other person, the new employer, to pick up. And it feels it's a bit like that pass the parcel game. Is just nobody wants to take ownership. And as an industry, maybe, and this isn't just construction, this is a whole societal problem. We should be clear on that. I think there's pressures within construction that make it unique, but as a society there's more substances and addictions and things out
there. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. The only thing is, in construction, obviously you've got the high risk factor. You've got people operating dangerous machinery and all that sort of stuff that could kill people. So that has got to be addressed. But it's interesting you say that there is a zero tolerance policy, but I like you said, I have seen it where people have just ignored it and just brushed it on the carpet. I mean, I even know of a company, I won't say who they are, but if they know that there's a drug test booked in, they'll tell whoever it is, don't come in today, come in tomorrow, go to another job, and then when they've gone, you can come back and that sort of stuff. So got to get rid of that sort of culture. But unfortunately, I think for many reasons, if you was to test everybody tomorrow in the industry, you'd probably lose 40%. I think, so what's going on? I think the industry is partly to blame for that, all the pressures that are involved in it and all the rest of it. So
it's interesting you say that, because we talk about drugs and alcohol and where that sits in kind of a wider piece. So you've got your sort of your health and the well-being, and then you've kind of got your safety and the risk, and kind of it doesn't sit solely in one camp and it doesn't sit solely in the other. It's kind of a cog, pardon the pun, within the kind of the wider kind of piece where it drives off a lot of things, and obviously the mental health aspect that's driving with suicide rates and things like that. Drugs and alcohol are bound to have a factor within that somewhere. And we can talk about some of the work we've done with a non-for-profit organisation where we were going out and doing some interviews on their behalf, completely independent, just trying to look at the suicide, and drugs and alcohol was part of our area of expertise, which we were talking about. And the amount of people that you kind of say, I know people that are turned up under the influence, and that's where the zero tolerance thing. So, what's the attitude? Do you know what your policy is? And everyone to the work would say, we've got zero tolerance. And you go, okay. So what does that mean? And when you start asking them for, that's where the difference comes from. It's kind of a tick box compliance poster that we stick up and say, yeah, zero tolerance, we don't accept drugs and alcohol on site. And then when others are sort of coming onto there and you're asking the guys specifically, okay, have you had any education? Do you know what, are you allowed to go down the pub at lunch? Are you allowed to have an alcoholic drink in your lunch break? Those are the kind of bits that you need to kind of understand to really drive proper change, I would suggest, or an understanding of what's acceptable and what's not, so they don't break the rules.
Yeah, so I mean, it was acceptable probably 20 years ago, wasn't it? Go down the pub and have a few beers and then come back and get back on it. I mean, someone told me the other day, a crane operator used to, he couldn't do his shift without them sending up a 4-pack of beer. Otherwise, he'd have the shakes all day.
Right.
It's mental, isn't it?
It's a different state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we kind of laugh and a joke, but like you say, you said rightly, there's the threat of danger of life. You're using big materials, so and operating a heavy plant and things like that. So we have had some people go, no, you've got to keep zero tolerance because there has to be that threat. Otherwise, there's no kind of. I think I would say to this is that for businesses, they probably need to. So what's the culture? You say, oh, we've got a great culture here. We look after our people and we do all of this stuff. And you go, okay, great. Tell me a bit more, where would you point them? So we try and look at it from two lenses, really. One for the employer, how can we help them to mitigate their risks, but also to build a framework where they know where to go, because sometimes they might want to do the right thing. And I would probably say most employers do want to do the right thing. It's just they don't know what does good look like? How do we get to that? And then there's the bit for the individuals where they're trying to then go, okay, I'm struggling, I need some help. But there's also accountability as well. You can't just come in and go, my wife's left me, I can do what I want, I can, snort cocaine till the cows come home and go down the pub. There has to be some level of accountability. So it's getting that balance right between the two. And hopefully this...
Yeah, that is right. That is right. But it reminds me actually what you just said there. There was an operator on one of my jobs once, a crane operator, and he was like, I worked for Select Tail Cranes, and he was like, he liked a little bit of sniff of an evening. He's like, oh, they get on my nerves. They try and run your life. I like to enjoy life. Like they're trying to run your life and stop you doing this. And we're like, mate, it's not about that. It's not about trying to run your life. It's just, it's about you're not killing people and making the right decision, not clouding judgment. So, companies like yourself coming in, trying to adopt that proper culture is really important. But do you get much pushback from companies, from employers?
So we get, I wouldn't say we get pushback from employers as such, because obviously most people, we've got a broad kind of spectrum of customers that we work with, rail customers. So rail, we probably use the example because it's, if you fail within the rail industry, you lose your PTS card and you're out of the industry for I think it's 5 years, from that perspective. So we've actually worked with them in terms of putting some of our support services in place. Because even though they might say, actually, maybe I'm drinking too much, or I have got a problem with, cannabis or whatever, if they go and seek that help first, then it's a very different conversation to just sitting and waiting and hoping they don't get picked up. And then obviously if they do. So whatever we do with any organisation, it's always about trying to encourage them to come forward. And through the education that hopefully comes through is that if you come and ask for help, we will give it to you. And that's the kind of the change. So I think when businesses are coming to us, I don't think there's any resistance perhaps to that. The positive change piece that we talked about around that kind of second chance from a zero tolerance perspective, that's almost, if I give it that some context, it's like a speed awareness course. So if you're caught speeding, do you take the points or do you do the course? It's kind of a bit along those lines and how we built it. So you go through, you complete it's about 4-hour intensive course. There's 2 follow-up unannounced tests at the back, which again you've got to provide as negative tests, and then there's also some access and some takeaway learning, should I say, that they can do as well themselves. That's the bit perhaps where we get the most resistance, should I say, because people are like, no, they're kind of almost stuck in their way of thinking of, we've got zero tolerance. This is how we deal with it. So it's
Yeah.
and you know,
Yeah.
from that perspective, you can only say, okay, it's fine as long as it's
Yeah.
working for you. But just to let you know, there is an alternative if you want to discuss it. So
I imagine some could argue that, if someone's failed a test once and they don't deserve to be back on site.
yeah, I guess there is that argument. You could say that, but then I think if you look at it from a perspective of looking at the investigation, it's not to say this is a carte blanche, everybody gets it. As soon as there's a
Yeah.
failed test, you're on it. There has to be certain criteria that the organisation feels this person meets. So, for example, if your gentleman that turned around and said, this is what I'm doing, they're trying to control my life, if he failed a test and he came up with that answer, he's probably not the right person to put onto that
Yeah.
course. There has to be
Yeah.
a right
Right.
kind of, I've made a mistake, I'm really sorry, of this is what's happened in my life.
Yeah.
I want to try. Can you help me, basically? And then they'll try and help on that regard.
So what if someone fails a test, they do your course,
Yeah.
great, they're happy, and then the next week they fail again?
Then it's a different story. You don't keep going on that. So I think it's
Right.
very clear on the course that we say, you've got a second chance here. You haven't been sacked.
Yeah.
The company's investing into you. This if there is another positive test, then it's a different outcome from there. And then obviously they'll go down, hopefully do another thorough investigation, and then it might be down the disciplinary process.
So what is there a business benefit for companies?
Yes, for a business, well, certainly from a retention perspective. So again,
Yeah.
I would argue that if you're investing into somebody that's these are people that potentially at low times, and that are struggling, that to actually invest in them and show that actually we're going to put an arm up, we are going to support you, we do value you, then yeah, there's a return on that. With such a demand on supply chain and workforce, it also gives them you're not going to be behind on the jobs. You sack somebody, you test, I don't know, 6 people on site, 2 of them come back as positive, and you go, great, that's half of the gang that needed to do this work today. You've got to bring somebody in to replace them. You're behind on the job. Everything's tight. So it has a knock-on concertina effect, and that's why we kind of see sometimes is that the rules kind of get bypassed because of that monetary budget,
Yeah.
timeline pressures, that they just kind of go, do you know what? Let's just sweep this one away rather than address
Yeah.
it and deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think
Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it did. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I think also it's important to highlight that it's not just, I think, did I mention this earlier? I can't remember. It's not just the people on the ground. It's not just the operators, the labourers. This trickles up to management as
Oh, it's
well.
everyone. Yeah, it's everyone. It's
It's
from the top
executives.
right the way down to the bottom. It should be. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there's different pressures within different. If you say like that, the senior managers, they might have completely different pressures to the guys that are out doing the
Yeah.
day work, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop them from having addictions or turn into unhealthy coping mechanisms.
It's not even just that really. I mean, I've been on jobs where you have your team building exercise and they go out for meals and drinks of an evening and stuff, that put it all on the card, and they come in. I mean, I know of one senior manager come in and I just said, look at the state of you, and like they told me to fuck off basically, jokingly, but like looked like in a proper state. And I know there was one manager once, they went down a pub, said to the geezer, fancy coming into the toilet for a quick one, and that. So it does go on. And again, where does that come from? It's come from somewhere. Is it the pressures? Is it the deadlines? Is it just that they just like a little bit every now and again recreational?
The edge off, yeah, and this everybody, as I think you're right, it's not Big Brother. So if people choose to do that
Yeah.
in their own time, and we're quite clear with businesses when we say this, you don't control them in their own time.
Yeah.
But what you're very clear on is when you come on and you start and work for us, this is the expectations and this is what we accept as acceptable.
Yeah.
So you're very clear on that piece. It's then, we've tried to just kind of build a couple of blocks after that in case there is people that fall down. So it's not quite so black and white. There is a grey area there that you can kind of we don't really want to lose this person because we're behind or whatever, and it gives them that. I think it gives the businesses an alternative, should I say? It's probably the best way to describe it, rather than just our hands are tied, you got to go sort of thing, and it causes more pressure. But you're right in what you're saying in terms of people, whatever they decide to do. There's salespeople, there'll be managers or whatever, keeping clients happy. We've heard cases of people buying drugs in some cases for clients to keep them happy, and go out all night entertaining the customers, and then turn up and then you're like, wow.
So are there any sort of myths you can debunk in regards to getting these substances out of your system, or
we've had quite a few different ones, like sucking a 2p or something like that to beat a breath alcohol test. That doesn't work.
Right.
So I think the biggest misconception is sometimes people kind of go, well, it depends on what type of test you're doing as well. So in terms of if you're doing a sort of urine test, they typically drugs stay within the system for sort of 3 to 4 days. If you're using oral fluid, it's probably between 24 and 48 hours. So again, that's some of the sort of myths. We had somebody that I won't name the customer, but we had a failed drug test, and it was on a Thursday. And they said, "Oh no, it wasn't that, because I don't do it. I only do that at the weekends." And we were like, "You use oral fluid, don't you?" And they were like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, that's a midweek use that's caused that fail. It's not it's not nothing from the weekend that's carried over that long." So those are some of the ones you see loads of different things. People with camel bags and trying to keep urine warm and stuff. Sometimes we kind of go, fair play, if you go into that length to kind of hide a drug test, you've got a serious problem, in that regard. But also, it's quite inventive in some ways.
What about so you get your passive smoking one? People say, "Oh, I didn't smoke. I wasn't smoking. I'm in a room full of people who were smoking it." I mean, is that possible?
Now, a quick word from our sponsor, WebMotion Media.
Are you ready to transform your online presence? At WebMotion Media, we're not just another digital agency. We're your partner in digital success. Our expert team delivers results-driven SEO that puts you at the top of search rankings, stunning web designs that convert visitors into customers, and data-backed PPC campaigns that maximize your ROI. Plus, our conversion rate optimization ensures every visitor counts. Don't just take our word for it. Our clients see an average of 40% increase in online revenue within the first 6 months. Ready to elevate your digital game? Visit our website from the links below this video, or call us today for a free consultation, and let's turn your digital dreams into reality.
No, very rare. I mean, obviously, because you're taking it into the lungs. I won't go into too much. People, scientists were much better than me, but no, it does. There's cut-offs as well to what it should be. So the cut-off should be at a level where it doesn't. Passive smoking won't cause you to do that. Right. There is probably an argument to say, if you know that you do have drug testing take place at work, don't sit in a room with people that are, blazing away. You want to probably try and take yourself out of that environment just for the sake of it. Things like CBD oils as well. So those are ones that have come up quite recently. So there's quite a wide range in terms of the quality of them. So obviously when we did the drug test, you're looking for the THC element, which is the psychoactive element of it. Obviously, medicinal cannabis and things like that, or the CBD oils, they take that bit out. There's still a little bit, but some of the unlicensed ones weren't. So you could genuinely get people that were testing. But again, that kind of comes back to educating people to say, if you're taking CBD oil to for legitimate reasons, just make sure it's from a reputable. Don't buy it from Amazon and just expect it to be. It says it's all right. Yes.
I must admit, I've been taking it for years, and I did email the company beforehand, say, look, this is the score of my job, and that, and they were kind of quite curt in their response, but it was kind of like as if to say, well, it's obvious, we're 0%. I'm like, well, I don't know. I had to check.
You do have to double check, because you do have to double check. I was going to say something. I was like, no, it's probably. I don't want to end up with a lawsuit against me, so I'll.
So I I went on to a job once. I was on cover. It was at Nine Elms Vauxhall. So there were three of us turned up for induction. We were there because I think three people had been gotten rid of because they failed a drug and alcohol test.
Oh, wow.
So half the day got so it was half the day gone. I wasn't meant to stay there. I was meant to just have the induction and go home. I was getting paid for the day. Thought lovely, that's all right, go home. But one of the guys who's been inducted, sorry, I should have mentioned we all had to have tests done during the induction. One of them failed. So great. So he failed. He's like, we're gonna have to test you again in a little while. He's drinking loads of water. I said, I've got to get loads of water. Me drinking buying bottles and tap water. I don't know if that's real or not, or whatever. But he failed basically. So I had to stay there and do some work, unfortunately. So is that another one? Can you get rid of it from that?
I mean, if you're doing urine, obviously the way that your body, it's excreted through the water system, so you try and flush it out. But I'll be honest with you, you typically, if somebody's failed, you would sit with that person and watch that they don't drink too much water from that perspective. So there is a certain amount you could flush it a little bit if it's just on the border, maybe. But the reality is probably not. It probably doesn't make that much difference. But again, if the testing procedures are sort of chain of custody procedures, typically somebody would sit with them to limit. And you get people that have shy bladders, so they would, they won't be able to go. So that's a case where you give them a certain amount of water over sort of 10, 20 minutes, whatever, to allow them to go. So again, there is certain things from there. But yeah, there's lots of, funny enough, I'm doing something at the moment for an occupational health company that we work with around drugs, and they kind of wanted a specific one on drugs. So I've been doing, I know it's my sort of day job in what we do, but doing specifics around some of the drugs that we look at, and things like ketamine, which is a huge problem at the moment. There's a really good Panorama documentary. I don't know, it's sort of half an hour. It's well worth a watch in terms of it highlights how cheap and how readily available it is, but also how much damage it does to the body. Which is there. But also things like the edibles, and so sort of things like vapes and things like that again are being laced. And there's nitazines, so they're like the synthetic opioids that are coming through. So you've probably seen like the US, so like fentanyl and things like that. That they're hugely problematic and sometimes being sort of put into people's vapes, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So
really,
it's cannabis vapes and stuff that are going through. And we've heard of cases where school children have had I think there's a study done where they took a certain amount of confiscated vapes, should I say, from England, and they tested them, and there was a certain percentage that contained spice within them, and you're thinking,
wow.
Yeah. So
is it? I mean, is this not regulated? I mean, is this not tested before it's put out on the shelf?
Again, it's where do you get it from? You're getting it from. You can get it from dark web. You can get it from certain cases. And again, how legitimate is it in terms of there? So if you're looking at proper medicinal kind of cannabis, in the US, is probably about 60 pounds, something like that. Whereas you can buy a vape for like a fiver, and it's laced with spice. So it's that level of
yeah, that is crazy. I mean, so ketamine is horse tranquilizer, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's mental. That is crazy. And it's not only that, they cut it with other drugs.
So it gets cut with lots of different. So it's typically more grainy than kind of cocaine. And again, cocaine gets cut with whatever. The ketamine's quite harsh. It looks almost like sugary in that regard. But yes.
So what's the standard method of testing these days?
Standard? Well, there's a couple. I would say we've certainly seen gold standard is urine. It's still kind of so that's what they would do on the railways. They've also, I think there's been a change that they can do oral fluid as well. And when we look at advising companies, it's kind of like what's the options and what's the best thing for you. So it could be urine. Obviously, gives you a greater window, to look at that. But sometimes, do you actually want that greater window if it spills into the sort of weekend time? Things like the police and the other sort of pre-employment, they'd look at hair testing. So you're looking at sort of 3 months worth. So you're looking at their lifestyle, obviously, because they're not doing, in theory, they shouldn't be doing anything from that perspective. So I'll probably say there's hair. There's a new one, sort of sweat, that's come out. I don't know how well that's been sort of. I don't know whether it has ever been legally challenged yet, but there's intelligent fingerprinting of the company that do that one. Through sweat testing, there is I think urine and oral fluid, but we're certainly seeing more of a shift towards oral fluid rather than urine.
Yeah, I did. I did a saliva test on my last test that I did on induction day. That was a saliva one. What's the most accurate?
Well, the point of care tests, I've got a couple of them lying around it. They cost potentially say like a tenner max. So they've obviously got a set standard within there in terms of, so they've got some level of accuracy. It's high 90s. It's like 90, 98, 99%. But that only gives you a screening result, really. So you should never really act on that. So
sorry, what was that? The hair test?
No, sorry, the oral fluid or the
okay.
Yeah, so that's the kind of what we would call a screening. It's called POCT, so it's a point test. And that really just tells you what drug groups you look at. So the main kind of groups you normally have like amphetamines, methamphetamines, benzodiazepines, cocaine, cannabis, those sort of things. There is more ketamine and tramadol have been recently added to some of the more recent panels, which we would obviously advise customers to look at as well because of the increased usage. But they really just give you an indication of whether there's a drug being detected. What you then do is your full chain of custody, if there is one, that you send it back to a laboratory, and they're the analyzers. These are £250,000 analyzers that look at the actual molecular stuff that goes through. That's far too sort of, I won't go into that level of kind of so the liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, that's kind of what they look at in terms of breaking that down. So that's when you then get your result back from the laboratory. That's your positive. That's what you should act on as your positive. So that first stage, we would normally say it's either negative or non-negative, and it could be because of declared medication. It could be because of poppy seeds. Sometimes cause opiate positives. So those are the kind of things that we look for.
Yeah, so I think it's important. So medication wise, we get memos sometimes where we have to declare what we're taking. Like say, if you're on cocodamol or whatever, then declare it to the company so that if you do get flagged up, then you say, this is why. So there's that as well. That needs to be put out there. What I was going to say. So I'm assuming what companies choose depends on cost, does it? Like the method of testing? Is there
they're typically around the same. So there's when you're looking at the testing side of things, you can call out an agency to do it. So you could call somebody out to do it. We do that in some cases. We work with agencies and could even call us out in some regards for planned testing. There is the ability to test yourself. So you could train your teams up to be able to do it yourself, and that's quite good in terms of if you're doing a lot of pre-employment or if you're working night shifts and you've got a big enough team to be able to cover it, then that sometimes works well. But that kind of really does depend on the cost. We see a blur sometimes. So sometimes companies will do the initial screening, and then if there's a non-negative, they'll call out an organisation to come and do a full back to lab process. So it's kind of a bit of both. Really, but it obviously testing costs money. That's the reality of it and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to the course. So how does it? What's the process from the failed test to going through the course? You have an assessment by yourself or the course company?
No, so it'll be, so basically we would allow the business, so the organisation would have access to it. So if they did get somebody that failed and they wanted to sort of rehabilitate them, I guess is the best way to it. And they've got access to positive change, they will just notify us and we will then work. So the course is delivered by our charity partner who's got over 45 years of experience of working with sort of drugs, alcohol and gambling. They're based in the Midlands, but we do it remotely, so it's all done like we're doing now, from online, so they would be able to go on and do in the Midlands, and they would do it very similar to like we're doing now, just do it remotely. So the people will be able to join the call, and it's about 4 hours intensive kind of look at sort of lifestyle and behaviour change, basically looking at the behaviours that's caused them to obviously fail a drug test, and just try and give them some coping mechanisms to be able to make potentially better decisions around, you know, how they're coping with certain life factors, I guess, and the choices that they make. Once they've done that, they would get a course completion thing to say, yeah, the person's completed the course, and then we will then, within sort of the next couple of weeks, there will be a couple of unannounced random tests that will come through. And then also for the individual, they'd have 6 months out the back end of the course to call through and talk to the specialist advisors from there. So they get kind of a bit more extra support that they need, rather than just 4 hours and then kind of, okay, you change. So if they feel like there's also some workbooks that they would take away from them. So there'd be stuff that actually help them to kind of take away a bit of reflection, I guess, probably in terms of, okay, well, so one of the examples would be, I don't know, if somebody always kind of ends up doing cocaine at the end of the night. So they go down the pub and, you know, their mates end up going, oh, let's go and get some bags in and stuff. So they go and that. So it's just trying to get out of that habit of doing that. So just leave the pub a bit earlier, you know, before that gets to that point. It's hard, but it's just trying to give them those mechanisms to try and take them away from that certain environment. Or if there's certain triggers, how do they knowingly know that, and then how do they avert that, so it's not just becoming that vicious cycle of, okay, this is always going to happen. So it kind of sounds very simple when you say it like that. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and obviously the specialist advisors are well versed in kind of having those conversations and to support together. So that's it kind of in a nutshell in terms of how it works. There's obviously a cost involved, so we would typically say, well, we would charge the organisation, but in some cases the organisation might even say to an individual, look, we're not going to sack you, but we want to know that you're committed to this. So there might be a small monetary association to it as well, just to kind of gauge how committed they are to that as well. So, but that's completely down to individual organisations, how they would want to do it.
So what do you do with, or what do they do with an individual who might have a real problem that you probably feel that isn't going to benefit from the course, is going to reoffend?
Yeah, so there's other ones. There's lots of great, fantastic charity supports out there as well. Certainly, I think within the construction industry, there's a number of good ones as well there. We've got one called Positive Support, and that's for somebody that knows that their drinking or their drug use is higher than it should be, or is they feel it's problematic to them. So that they would get in contact that way. So that would either be a referral from the business, or depending on how the business has it set up, they would allow a self-referral for that individual. And then what they would then essentially do is make contact with one of the specialist advisors again, and then they would book in some sessions from there. And it's more tailored, that sort of like hour-based sessions that really drive on an individual level that person, that particular case that they're working through. In some cases, it might not be relevant for them. They might just do a hand-holding case, because they might need like medical detoxification if it's at real high levels, in which case they would then support them into that longer program, whether that be through local support or whatever. So, but the company that we work with, the charity partner, they actually support the GPs. So if you go and see your GP and you go in and that way, obviously there's a longer wait time sometimes. When we hear horror stories of people waiting for support, this kind of bypasses that wait time, and you just go, within sort of 2 weeks, you're probably having your couple of sessions already, rather than waiting 6 months that you're hearing some.
Cool. So fast tracking them. Do you know like the most common types of fails, or the most common types of lifestyles that would fail?
So the drugs that we kind of see that most fail still is still cocaine and cannabis, and those sort of those ones. In terms of the lifestyles, I think it varies, to be honest. You kind of bracket it, I guess, in terms of, you see your younger generation where you kind of go, they'll be out partying and doing all stuff that I used to do many moons ago and stuff in terms of that side of things. So they typically will sort of fail for what you'd say, the ecstasies, the cocaines, cannabis and that. What you tend to find as well is that you don't just get one positive. So it might be like a positive for cocaine, but you might get positive for cocaine and cannabis. So somebody's had that, trying to calm themselves down after a big weekend or whatever. So there's also, you see for the older generation or sort of the aging generation, where it's sort of self-medicating. So again, it might be opiate-based medication. It might be things like tramadol, where you kind of, and this is where I think it kind of blurs the line sometimes, is yes, they've failed a drug test, but they're almost self-medicating because they're broken in that regard. They feel so broken in their body that if I take some tramadol, I know I can get through the working day. And you don't want to kind of get to that position where they're and sometimes it's not even prescribed for them. It's prescribed to another family member that they've just gone off, taken my wife's tablets just to get me through the day or whatever. So you kind of from there. So that's kind of where you still see things. That's obviously just a broad rule. You still get people in their 60s sitting down and tucking into bags of cocaine. It's not an exclusive club to it's just the younger generations. It does affect everyone. So.
I find in my industry the travelling workers tend to get flagged up a lot. People staying in digs, got nothing else to do. They go down the pub all night, have a few beers with the gang, whatever gang they're in, all get together and that. So I think that's quite problematic.
I think that comes back to, like we were talking about, for the construction industry, there's a number of outside factors that then elevate the risk of drug and alcohol use more. Like you say, being away from home, the quality of the work, not having those connections when you come home sometimes, from a long hard day, and that it's going to take its toll. So they're looking perhaps for escapes to kind of, or they're just kind of, well, that's what everybody else is doing. So they feel like they want to keep up with, I've got to be one of the lads. I've got to keep in with the crew. So I'll do what they do.
So how far do we go with this in terms of the course? Do you think it should become mandatory?
Well, I'd love it to be mandatory. I don't. I'll be brutally honest. I think it has to work for every organisation, and it's got to fit with what you're trying to do as an organisation. We debated this the other day. Is zero tolerance outdated in terms of the terminology for zero tolerance, or should it be sort of safety first or something like that? Because you don't want to, as I said before, the whole reason for drug and alcohol testing in the first place was you wanted safe sites. So you don't want to diminish the safety aspect of it, but it feels like it's just it become very lip service, tick box kind of. You put it in big bold letters, you can underline it, you can do whatever you want, but does it actually resonate? My argument would be, if you look at the current state of it, like you said, if you tested everybody tomorrow within the industry, I reckon I think 40% would be, pretty good. I think it's probably a bit higher than that.
I think so. There's definitely is a culture for it. Yes. Well, anything else you'd like to add? I think I've covered everything I'd like to. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I just think what do I say? I think it's just down to businesses really, in terms of, as I said at the beginning, it is a societal problem, so it naturally spills into the workplace. I think anybody that kind of says we don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol is the head's buried in the sand. It is there within your business, whether you know about it or not. It's how do you try and manage that? I would suggest in a better way, and having this sort of caring culture. We do great well-being and we do this sort of stuff. That kind of has to translate, I would suggest, through everything you do. It can't sort of stop at the subjects that are sometimes a bit too hard to fix.
I think in managerial terms, I think there are some probably blocking factors. So you have accountability factor, because what if they get tested and then they fail? A pride thing, does a senior manager or something want to go through this or be seen to go through this program and maybe appear weak or maybe appear like a liability? Are they going to want to sort of sweep it under the carpet and just try and plough through.
Yeah, there's a number of factors. I think there's a number one thing I would sort of say on this is in the fact that we've developed positive change because we think it's the right thing to do, and we generally are kind of listening to what outcomes are from individual organisations that we're talking to. We can't do it on our own. There is collaboration here, so I'm a massive advocate for collaborating. So there's Craig Payton, who I don't know if you know, Craig, and Nick O'Shea and people like that. So these are great guys that I've had conversations with that are singing the same sort of song around mental health and addiction. Steve, I think you had Steve on, didn't you? Steve Gerby as well. Again, great advocate for what he does. So we haven't got the lived experience of going through that. So it's almost, we might be able to help and support in terms of some of the support services, but I would suggest it's kind of, if businesses are thinking about it, you don't have to just go with one provider and go, oh, we've got that covered. We can wrap around, if your testing program's working fine, but it's not delivering the bespoke training that you need, we can perhaps come in and plug that gap. Or if you've not got the support that you need, we can come and do that. Or if it's some education and support front end to talk to you guys, Nick or Craig or whoever could do that in collaboration with us. Anybody that says that they can do it all on their own, I would be wary of it. It's around collaborating and working to get the best results.
Like you said earlier, we're in a trade shortage. We need trades. Tradespeople need work.
Yep.
The industry is in a depression crisis, so why not try and help as many people as we can, try and keep them in work and get them through this problem, whatever the problem it is they've got. I think companies have got a duty, they should have some kind of responsibility for that. They've got a bit of a duty of care to do that. So keep doing what you're doing, mate. Well done.
Get out
there as much as you can. Hopefully you can get on more podcasts and get on the radio or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's for us, it's slowly, you've got to try and change the mindset of the sort of the industry in some cases. So, but I think there are, we're starting to see some green shoots and there's some forward thinking, should I say, or thinking outside of the box, should I say, in terms of that. Sure. So yeah, hopefully.
Do you go out onto sites to do talks and site visits and things?
Haven't done as much as that, but we're not averse to it. I think that's where it comes in terms of when we're talking about collaboration. Sometimes, I think I could probably do a job, but I know that someone like Craig or Nick will probably do a better job from coming from the industry. I think perhaps sometimes works better. We might be able to, as we say, give some of the backup and the support behind what they're doing for the business, but maybe they're, if they look at me and go,
Okay, thanks so much for your time, mate.
No problem.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully I can speak to you again in the future, maybe on my podcast.
Love to, whatever.
See how things progressing for you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Jimmy. Really appreciate it. All right, take care. Cheers.
You too. Bye, mate. Bye.